Is my hat on straight? We're good? Thanks, Eddie. Okay, Gwa'sala. I just want to thank everybody for coming to our press conference this afternoon. And as is so important to show the respect and traditions, I would like to ask Ahousaht to lead us in an opening and have the chiefs come join me at the front. Thank you for that. With that, my name is Dallas Smith. My traditional name is Chinehkint First Nation. I'm the acting chief of the Tlowitsis Nation and spokesperson for the Coalition of First Nations for Finfish Stewardship. We want to give thanks to the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations for giving us safe passage on their territory today as we come to talk about the business that affects our territories. We've gathered here to give a response to the announcement made by the Minister of Department of Fisheries and Oceans a short while ago around the future of Atlantic salmon farming within our territories. I think one of the first things I need to correct from the announcement today for the BC Pacific Caucus of the Federal Liberal Party that Vancouver is not British Columbia. There's 5,000 people who depend on employment from this sector right now. Over the last 2 years, we've worked with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans on transition plans to take into consideration the concerns that we've heard from general public, from our communities, and others as we go forward to transition this sector that's helped us find a place in the development of the blue economy. With those 5,000 jobs that exist in British Columbia in this sector, 500 of them are directly employed in remote First Nations communities. As we're all aware, a high-paying job, a family-supporting job in a First Nations community is like 4 jobs anywhere else. With the unemployment that we face in our communities, with the downturn of Pacific salmon, with forest resources being managed the way that they are, we need to continue to find a way to economically support our people while building a sustainable path forward. I think another point that's important to mention is the chiefs who have joined me today come from territories that have protected 30 to 60% of their traditional territories through the Great Bear Rainforest and agreements like we saw yesterday with the Ahousaht and Tlowitsis people. This is different than activists pointing out a problem that they want to see fixed. This is about the governance of communities and a way of life continuing to go forward. So we're a little bit concerned to work with the Government of Canada for the last 2 years to work on a transition plan on a path forward, to hear today about the shelf life that they're looking at for this sector that supports our communities. Today I have joined with me Chief Terry Walkus from the Gwa'sala Nakwaxda'xw Nation, Deputy Chief Isaiah Robinson from the Kitasoo Xai'xais Nation, Hereditary Chief Richard George, Gwa'sala Hasheukumiss, Tyee Haw'il, Ahousaht Nation, Ollie Charlie, Gwa'sala Ahousaht, Ahousaht Nation, Hereditary Chief Harvey Robinson, Kitasoo Xai'xais Nation, Hereditary Chief Patty Walkus, Gwa'sala Nakwaxda'xw Nation, Eddie Walkus, Councillor, Gwa'sala Nakwaxda'xw Nation, and Cyrus Singh, the CEO of Cwatsy Economic Development Corporation. So I've asked each of these chiefs to come join us to share some of the concerns and some of the path that they see forward to help us continue to work with the governments of the day. I think that's the other difference from the activists who've been against this industry, is this is about communities' self-determination. This is about taking the opportunities for employment, but spreading them into enhancement. Each of our communities have relationships with companies that we've asked them to invest in wild salmon operations within our territories, whether it be through husbandry, whether it be through cryogenic freezing of brood stock so we can continue to grow native species within our territories. But beyond the salmon farming sector, we're also working with forest companies, mining companies, provincial and federal governments to find all the obstacles that are facing wild Pacific salmon on the coast of British Columbia, and working together to find that path forward that's going to enable us to continue to depend on salmon from a cultural, economic, and community point of view. So without any further ado, we know everybody's got deadlines for the news this afternoon. I'd like to get into the speakers, and I'd like to ask Chief Terry Walkus of the Gwa'sala Nation to come up and share a few words. Chief?
Gilakasla. I have to share from our nation, the Gwa'sala Nakwaxda'xw Nation. Some of the statements made in the conference, I'm not in agreement with in regards to our people. The Gwa'sala Nakwaxda'xw Nation is deeply disturbed with the federal government's unilateral decision on finfish aquaculture in our unceded territories. This has taken place without proper consultation, which they claim they did, on our consent. There is profound sadness and disappointment with the decision to prioritize the whims of so-called environmentalists over the rights of the Gwa'sala Nakwaxda'xw Nation. This decision is an attempt to extinguish and constitutionally guaranteed rights and titles. GNN has never ceded or surrendered our rights, titles, and interests. GNN will proceed to assert our sovereignty over our waters. This will lead us to regulating all forms of aquaculture along with all marine activities. Aquaculture is a means of economic empowerment and the path towards self-determination. It holds our nation from the brink of poverty that has been imposed on us by governments. The decision is unresponsible, unrealistic, and unachievable by 2025. It undermines the trust and good faith needed for respectful nation-to-nation relationship and is a step backward in reconciliation. Reconciliation has been a cornerstone of this government. They have failed our nation in this respect. As a nation, we have been working to rebuild our community and secure a prosperous future for our people. Our plan incorporates advanced technologies, wild stock rehabilitation, and lessons learned from successful sustainable aquaculture. We demand that the federal government and Department of Fisheries and Oceans, DFO, honor our constitutional rights and as decision makers. NGOs and environmentalists have their place, but they are not rights holders. The destruction of our communities by these politicians need to stop. People's lives, families are on the line. Poverty in our community and those communities that depend on aquaculture will be the outcome this government is responsible for. Work with us to build, not destroy. Respect our rights, not with words, but with action. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief. I think it's important to keep to understand that the social situations our communities are facing are only exacerbated by short-sighted decisions like this. We need to continue to work together on a meaningful transition to keep finding that path forward. With that, I'd like to ask Deputy Chief Isaiah Robinson from the Kitasoo Xai'xais Nation to share some words.
Thank you, Dallas, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Isaiah Robinson. I am the Deputy Chief Counselor of the Kitasoo Xai'xais Nation. I live in the remote community of Klemtu on the east coast of Swindle Island, 800 kilometers north from this location. We are a long ways from this overall situation that is currently being decided in Ottawa. The overall decision is based off of wealthy millionaires, politicians, and activists that are attempting to once again dictate our future as Indigenous people. The journey to get here from Klemtu in the wintertime is 24 hours. A long journey, and overall, even in the summertime, involves planes, trains, and automobiles. The overall remoteness of this community was limited with resources and access in general, importing food from the mainland once a week. We choose to participate in this overall salmon aquaculture because we know it reduces the pressures of the wild stock and meets demand of affordability, locally producing farmed-to-table food to prevent further inflations for Canadians. The Kitasoo Xai'xais are stewards of the land and salmon farmers, protecting our lands and waters for nearly 14,000 years. Salmon farming and environmental protection can coexist, as proven by our nation and as stipulated by Dallas with the GBI order. We've established marine protected areas and conducted 20 years of scientific research and also developed the overall Kitasoo Xai'xais Innovation Plan, which we delivered to the federal government as of February 2024. We know our waters. We live here. We continue to work with our partners to adapt best technologies and practices of the day, the ones that work best for our geography, our waters, and our access to power. When it comes to Indigenous people, pre-contact, our nations flourished, living off the land and ancestral knowledge. When colonization hit, our people were economically excluded, leading to the generational trauma of poverty. We have decided to join this overall salmon aquaculture industry and build a business that could be great for our people and based on the economics and social well-being without compromising our traditional knowledge and stewardship efforts. We have done everything right, and now the government is excluding us again. Before we had salmon aquaculture, our territories in overall our employment rate was 5%. This is in the mid-60s, and the rates of suicides were tragically common. Since salmon aquaculture was introduced 40 years ago, our employment rate has climbed to a nearly 99%, with the majority tied to aquaculture. It has been over 18 years since our communities has experienced a suicide. We have built the aquaculture business to fit the capacity, the lands, and the waters of our territories and meets the needs for Canadians. It feeds into our economy. It removes the pressure of the wild salmon population, and it gives our people a chance to reclaim what's stolen from us from the time of contact. This year-round job are crucial for our community's well-being. They have disappeared, and they will not be replaced. As part of the DFO process, we worked tirelessly over the last year to develop our own innovation plan to support the transition of this industry from First Nations-led perspectives. From what I've seen today, this has largely been ignored. The Government of Canada that was supposed to be supporting economic prosperity and reconciliation and self-determination did not show up today. From the beginning, Minister Lebouthillier was saying and reiterated just moments ago that this was proposed a transition plan by the Government of Canada that is realistic, responsible, and achievable. But forcing remote access communities to prototypes, tests, and develop innovative technologies within 5 years is not realistic. Failing to properly consult with First Nation leaders is not responsible. Neglecting the fact that we, as coastal First Nations, lack infrastructure, electricity needed to run these closed containment systems makes it not achievable. However, in saying that, I do see opportunity for First Nations or for the 5-year salmon aquaculture license renewal window announced today. This renewal provides a future for salmon aquaculture that respects First Nations and our experience, knowledge, and technology. It's a step in the right direction, but leads to further progress for coastal communities, economy, environment, and social well-being. Where I see challenges over the next 5 years, it's nearly impossible to achieve the necessary technology and infrastructural advances that are required. We need fact-based and practical decisions. Implementing closed containment would take over 5 years and even would require significant funding. So my question is to the Government of Canada and to the people of BC, do you want nations to succeed? If the answer is yes, please listen to us. This is a battle of rights and title, true reconciliation the government promises for First Nations. The proposed transition away from open net farms undermines these commitments. We won't be told what to do in our territories by the government, by activists, by people who do not live in these territories and have no claim on our waters. Reconciliation is recognizing our abilities to choose what happens in our territories, and it is determined on our own future. We will decide. Prime Minister Trudeau announced in 2019 the transition of the planned collaboration for First Nations. Last year, the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans confirmed the plans that incorporate the ancestral wisdom and traditional knowledge within the last 6 to 12 months during this transition time to draft a plan to put forth. Currently, unilateral decisions violates these promises and goes against reconciliation, UNDRIP, and DRIPA. This is a political decision. This is not based on science or fact, but is based on the appease of white, privileged activists who fearmonger false data and build anti-fish farm narratives. This decision is the work of billionaires and activists who misguide and mislead Vancouverites. The next 5 years are crucial for the industry's future and the relationship between First Nations on the coast of British Columbia and Canada. It is a critical role in securing the wild stock and providing affordable food for Canadians. First Nations must be at the table to shape the future. It is our inherent right. I will say it again, Kitasoo Xai'xais Nation or other coastal nations won't be told what to do in our territories by the government, by activists, or by the people who do not live in our traditional territories and have no claim on our coastal waters. We decide. The courts have shown time and time again that there is a path. We believe this path includes modern salmon culture, aquaculture. Thank you.
Continuing on, I would like to ask Hasheukumiss Tyee Haw'il from Ahousaht to join us for a few words. Chief.
Hello, my name is Hasheukumiss Tyee of the Ahousaht Nation. I'm an 18th generation to hold this title currently. There has been not been adequate consultation with my nation. I requested many meetings and sent many letters, including the Prime Minister asking to be heard on this issue, Minister Jordan, Murray, and Diane. Our rights have been dismissed in favor of privileged, liberal, urban riding political narrative. 5 years to transition to land-based or closed containment in my territory is the same as shutting our operations down. We do not have the land or the supporting power infrastructure to do this. In fact, as I know a thing or two about salmon farming due to our decades of working with industry, this is not even logistically possible. Therefore, due to the no consultation on this decision, we will be allowing for a more realistic approach of a 10-year transition plan in my Ahousaht. The potential impacts to my community and citizens' well-being is severe. I would like to remind everyone, we are unceded. This land belongs to our hereditary chiefs, and we are the ones who will decide who accesses our resources moving forward. Only our collective Haw'il have the right to decide the title and rights in our Ahousaht territory. I can't express enough, this process is far from reconciliation. More needs to be done to acknowledge the Declaration of the Rights of the Indigenous People Act in British Columbia. Canada, and everyone in this room, needs to look in the mirror and accept all the harm you have done to the wild salmon. And this has happened long before the farming industry salmon farming industry has entered our Ahousaht, which is the territory. Do not fool yourselves or the public. Soon you will need to look in the mirror to see what this decision has done to our community. The self-determination that we need to go forward to continue our health and wellness of our nation is dependent on this. We purchased a $6.5 million resort recently with a $2 million upgrade with all intent purposes of healing our nation. This government continues to fail us time and time again. The promises of funding this resort has fallen short once again. So now this importance of what we're doing here with the extension, with self-determination, as you've heard many times over in this room, well, no longer can we trust Canada to do the right thing, to walk alongside of us with what I call reconciliation. Far too long has reconciliation been on the table. My grandfather, my father have gone through it. And right now, I've had enough of it. Right now, we're about reconciliation, and it's high time Canada walks alongside of us, collectively together with solutions moving forward. We're not going to stand idle on this situation, and our voices are collectively heard today. Moving forward, the due process needs to be addressed. We need to be heard. You know, the countless letters that I would gladly share with everybody, and especially the media, with the lack of acknowledgement on what we've been pressing for the last 4 years with my riding here that I've sat in for my father. Meaning consultation needs to happen, and we have not had it thus far. And to be called last night, to be told about a 5-year transition plan, and that's the end of it. After that, well, that's not going to sit well with us, and we're not going to stand for it, as you've heard all of us here in this room today. So moving forward, we look forward to continuing on our good process with Canada, and we really truly look for meaningful consultation moving forward. 2.
Gwa'sala Chief. Again, we're hearing the importance of the social issues that our communities are having to take on our own. As we go to the Government of Canada to look for help on these issues that plague our communities, own source revenue has been one of the only avenues to success that we've been able to find. And so it's important for us to continue to band together to continue with that. Chief Simon John of the Ehattesaht Nation, please come up and share some words with us.
You guys are all pretty bright. But anyway, thank you for having me here. And I'm really happy to be here, actually, and I'm comfortable here. But at the same time, you know, our people were comfortable a long time ago. And it just seems like, you know, there's something where the government appeases certain even races or relative connections or even rich people. But at the same time, it seems like we're really undervalued as Native people and how we actually deliberate and how we make our decisions. And it just, you know, there's a lot to be known, but at the same time, there's not a lot of people that know. And I'm sorry, but the history of Canada is written for certain people and how we actually face the relationship challenges that we have. And our environment and the protectionism of our environment is within us all, and how we value each other seems to be unmeaningful currently. And even today's speech on how it went on meaningfulness and what meaningfulness actually means to the government of BC and Canada, it's owned by them. They own that meaning. And in everything, for us to think that our involvement as Native people is deliberate and unconditional is really the way that we've challenged ourselves to actually accept that as Native people. And it's really hard to accept that Canada is still in this framework today of actually not understanding the relationship, how meaningful it actually is with Native people. And to be consequential about everything related to the resource and how the resource is managed, it becomes really an undermined opportunity to actually exceed the will of Canadian people. And the thing is that for me to think that to be in every resource and to have a lifestyle that is really meaningful and comfortable within my territory is who I am. And to think that who I am doesn't mean anything to Canada and where I come from, even though that it's been there for 10 or 15 or 20,000 years, these aren't important things to consider. And throughout time, I've had to adjust, throughout my lifetime, I've had to adjust my life to actually practice in my own territory. And it's really, you know, my heart is hurt today a little bit more just because of that. You know, I've been through all the dilemmas of Native people throughout my life that being an underachiever has become my life. And to think that this has put you into your box where we belong as Native people, it has. And to think that even living my life to the greatest extent that I have and utilizing all the resources that have value within my territory, the bearing on it is that the government still owns it. They own it all. And the people and the rich people and in everything, the salmon, the wild salmon, it is what it is today because of all those situations that greed and mismanagement has created. And I really think that, you know, for the reporters to really understand that Ehattesaht is really in a particular place of richness. And even if it's the richest area in the world to grow salmon, it really is, but it's also in the richest place to grow wild salmon. But there's no wild Chinook salmon on the west coast of Vancouver Island. That's the problem. There's no wild Chinook on the west coast of Vancouver Island. And that's what we have to live with as people. This is what we have to live with people. And in everything, it's controlled by the recreational, it's controlled by the commercial, it's controlled by the DFO. But it also undermines the spirit of the West Coast people. And to think that the communities in BC or the communities in Canada own the West Coast people, that's not right. I think we really should understand how we got here, why we're here, and what is the meaning of wild Pacific salmon today. There is none. There's none on the west coast of Vancouver Island. The Fraser River controls all boundaries related to where we are today. And in all the decision-making that's happened in the past related to salmon have been achieved through undetermined and undervalued opportunity. And it's sickening. It's really sickening that we're here. Thank you.
I was actually in a pretty good mood before this started, but the somber reality check from our chiefs up and down the coast have made us realize that if we want to continue towards self-determination and the path forward is we have to lead that ourselves. But we as a group of nations who have been working together are committed to working with the governments of the day. Those governments change. Our hereditary leadership who hold that rights and title that we talked about don't. It's very concerning for me that to be able to even save our opportunities to the point that we have for this short reprieval had to start in Newfoundland because the elected MPs of this government refused to meet with us for years. We had to get traction from Newfoundland and work our way to Ottawa, till only then were we heard and started to work. And we were working on a transition plan that was going forward until the Liberal Caucus, Pacific Caucus, started interfering with that. We didn't get invited to Minister Wilkinson's press conference today. When he was the Minister of Fisheries for a couple years, he did none of this. But yet, he's worked through the ladies who have held that position to achieve his goals. And we're not putting up for it anymore. We're going to continue to work with the province. We're going to continue to work with the federal government, and we're going to take direction from our communities as we have since time immemorial. So with that, we'd like to close our press conference and open it up for any questions. Kayla Kessler. Okay, I'm okay now. Any questions from the media? I can't really see if anyone's raising their hand because of the light in the middle and the back. There's the evolution of technology is always there. The infrastructure to even start figuring out what kind of technology we'd apply doesn't exist right now. So we've started discussions with BC Hydro and the Ministry of Energy and Mines to start to work towards identifying what gaps are there for us to be able to understand what technology can be brought, what infrastructure needs to be put in place so we can start a path to implement it. But that takes money and investment, and the 5 years doesn't give us the certainty that we need to bring in the millions of investment for that at this point.
Can I follow that up,
Please.
Your question?
The question for you, Hereditary Chief. Despite your 10-year plan, how challenging will it be for your community to recover economically from what went down today?
Well, this is the only protocol that we have that's bringing any kind of funding to go towards our health and wellness to address tourism sector. We recently just purchased a $6 million whale watching outfit in our neighboring town of Tofino. 30 years have our Indigenous been held back from this kind of opportunity because of the funds. This was a real historical moment by providing this opportunity for our nation, creating 25 jobs. In a poverty nation that we have, we're remote, 30 minutes away from Tofino. 1,200 people live there. There's 200 jobs that are in my nation. So every job that we have with Surmat Canada is very, very, as you heard Dallas say, 4 to 1. That's not a joke. And, it's going to take a long time to heal our nation as well to get into the workforce. We have a lot of other economic development in the future that we've earmarked to advance ourselves. And the only way we're going to do this is self-determination. As I mentioned earlier, the Government of Canada has failed my nation over and over and over again with broken promises, not only financial gain, but a gain to our title and rights. The broken promises that we keep hearing, enough is enough. So again, what would this do to our nation? It would collapse everything that we had. The $6.5 million resort that we just purchased for our wellness very well could be handed back to the government because we could foreclose by not continuing. Same with the whale watching outfit industry. And going forward with all the other economic opportunities that we have. In my vision, in the next 10 years, we will literally have created more than 250 jobs for my nation in the tourism sector, directly benefiting from Surmat Canada's help financially.
Any further questions? We started developing transition plans 2 years ago that have put us in a position to be able to have these discussions now. So what we're looking for is a tripartite discussion with BC and Canada to talk about what a responsible transition plan looks like. If closed containment is part of the path forward in some areas, we need the chance to be able to talk about the gaps like I talked about with the previous question, but we need to continue to make sure that we're filtering out the science as well. One of the challenges with the activist claims is they're based on how the industry started. This industry is only 40 years old on the coast of British Columbia. The energy sector has years to meet some of their objectives that government sets in. The forest sector has had centuries to try and make the changes that are necessary. But this sector is given 5 years to try and make a paradigm shift is irresponsible. So we want to continue talking with government about how we can progress a transition plan that meets the needs of mitigating wild salmon while still building economically viable businesses. We keep hearing about land-based aquaculture. We have not seen a successful venture in place. We've seen attempts, but we haven't done anything that will deal with the food security crisis that we're dealing with. Right now, Canada is importing its salmon to feed Canadians from Norway, Scotland, and Chile at triple or quadruple the carbon footprint. And so we want to have that responsible discussion with both levels of government about how do we look at the whole picture. And that's something we're going to continue to keep striving for. I see the tactics that the activists using as very divisive. I know when we meet together nation to nation, aquaculture rarely comes up in many of our meetings when we're talking about forestry, when we're talking about health, education, other issues. This is simply an activist-driven agenda to divide First Nations apart. And what we're doing is we're fixing that by engaging nations ourselves, nation to nation. British Columbia is a wonderful place. There's many different languages. If we thought as autonomously as non-native colonial people did, we'd all speak one language. But we all have respect for each other's territories and backyards. And so if we can go back to having that discussion at a respectful level, we think we can work through a lot of the concerns that the First Nations have around our sector.
Jack, more city news. Will these 17 nations comply when the ban comes into effect in 5 years?
That's a tough question to answer right now. You know, I've stood on the stage with both the Prime Minister and the Premier within the last year talking about joint decision-making, self-determination, and all those sorts of issues. I really believe that UNDRIP and DRIPA will evolve to a point where we will be issuing our own licenses as we see fit for a vast array of different resource opportunities. So I see 5 years as giving us the runway to figure out how do we not only jointly make decisions, but progress into the world that we keep talking about of reconciliation, where we actually make decisions on what's best for our community. Anything further in the middle?
Is there a Brian Kingset in attendance today? Brian Kingset?
Is he still here?
Would you be able to give us a comment, please, Brian?
I don't want to comment with these guys invited me as a guest. Do you want me to comment, Dallas?
I've already asked the question to Dallas. I was hoping to get a question as well about the close containment.
Yeah, maybe outside.
Thank you. Sorry.
Excellent, no worries. Appreciate that. Respectful. That's how we start. Anything further? Sorry, again, I can't see with the light. Oh, there we go. Okay, seeing none, I'd just like to thank you all for your time, and we look forward to continuing to be able to update Canadians on the progress we're making on how we manage ocean resources within our territories. Thank you for being here. Ehattesaht.